So hello again, you're listening to the Blockchain Socialist podcast, and I have a special guest. His name is Akseli Virtanen. He is the co-founder of the Robinhood Cooperative Hedge Funds and the Economic Space Agency, which is an organization for researching protocols for post-capitalist economic expression. So hi Akseli, how are you doing?
Hey man, nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, of course. I had to invite you because when I found out about ECSA, I got really excited. It was a very interesting project, and it almost seemed like this organization of Marxist academics and technologists coming together to look at blockchain, but I guess with using blockchain specifically in constructing post-capitalism, which is something that is, I think, really interesting for me. But so before we get into ECSA, which is the Economic Space Agency, maybe we can first start with your introduction, and maybe you can talk about the story behind the Robinhood Co-op and ECSA.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. That was a pretty interesting introduction to what we do. So I'm a political economist. The emphasis on the both words. I'm both political and economist. I've written quite a lot about I did my PhD in the School of Economics in Helsinki. I've written quite a lot about history of economic organization, economy, its conventions, also about its future, and finance too. And if I've learned something, it's maybe that economy actually it has a history. So it has not always worked in the way that we think that it works now. It has not always meant the same thing that we think that it means today. And one of the key consequences of this is that if it has a history, it also has a future. And this is kind of what makes me excited. And one of my favorite finance theorists, for instance, Myron Scholes, who won the Nobel Prize back in '97 for the Black-Scholes option pricing theory formula, he said it in his Nobel Prize speech that, it's important to understand that, for instance, debt and equity, they are just historical institutional arrangements, and there will come a time when the distinctions between debt and equity, for instance, will blur, and this is the kind of what he meant was that they are just historical arrangements and they will change. They are not something set in stone. So when right now, like derivatives and the cryptographically enabled economic distributed applications are changing the conventions of economic organization, just like the joint stock company and the emergence of stock exchange in the 1840s and 50s changed completely irreversibly the way that the production was organized. In the same way, now that we are, or I can be part of this moment when we are actually capable of re-engineering and rethinking these future economic categories and formations, that just makes me super excited. So that's like one part of my trajectory here. Then, so I'm a political economist, but also an organizational experimenter. So I've organized quite a few large-scale experiments, creating these new economic and social financial formations. There was once this newspaper article, and it was characterizing me as the Andy Warhol of Finance, which back then I thought was really funny. But on a second thought, I thought it was also important that he kind of touched something important, because the place where art and politics meet, it's this place where the old forms, the old forms of subjectivity, all forms of organization, all forms of society, of economy start to collapse. And we are anticipating the new ones, these new forms of life and organizing, these new formations. And that's kind of has been the project for us. And yeah, that's how I think of the history. And Robinhood was like our first attempt with the team to re-engineer finance, or to create this new kind of a financial formation. And there this was back in 2012 when we established this decentralized hedge fund. And first thing we did was that we released this massive data mining algorithm, which was following all the transactions at the US stock exchanges. It was identifying the best actors and in particular stocks, and then imitating their emerging consensus behavior. So in a sense, we were turning them into data banks and used then big data analysis and structured finance to share like their most important means of production, their knowledge, their relations, their positions on the market. And then we imitated like what they were doing and shared this knowledge with all the members of the cooperative. So we were organized as the decentralized hedge fund. The governance model we chose was a cooperative. So every member had one vote, and every member also then decided like which part of the profit they put to a common pool. And then all the members of the cooperative decided together which kind of commons producing projects we invest from this common pool. So it was kind of this first attempt at re-engineering finance, cash and risk flows. And it also showed that we actually have the power and imagination to do it. And you could tell it when you could see it in the people's eyes, that when they realized that, shit, hey, we can actually do this, then there was no return, no coming back from there. So we were like using finance as the matter and medium of our expression, really. So here, the next immediate thought was then that, okay, so if we can do this, wouldn't it be cool that if everyone could do it? And that was the thought of ECSA, of the Economic Space Agency. And so what if we had this tool set for expressing, this medium for expressing different financial, different economic organizational formations? That was the original idea of ECSA. And then that quite quickly gathered a group of very, very smart people around itself from different disciplines. So we have political economists, software architects, game designers, finance theorists, economic anthropologists, monetary historians and theorists, artists, the kind of a group that you really actually need to rethink and re-engineer what the economy could be.
Yeah. and so I guess, it sounds like Robinhood, it's taking an institution that people find, I think for the most part, somewhat reprehensible, in the sense that when you look at some of the top hedge funds and like the amount of money and the amount of profit that they make off of, particular trading strategies that they have, whether they be legal or not. But then you sort of rework that into a more, I guess, communitarian approach, where it's more, it's a cooperative. And then you think, okay, since we're able to express ourselves, we figured out a way to express ourselves differently than would a maybe traditional capitalist organization would on the markets. We can try to reproduce this type of organization over and over again through modern technology and such like that. Is that sort of how the progression went?
Yeah, exactly. And kind of with from the kind of a political angle, we think sort of still talk about Robinhood as minor asset management. It's a term, political term from a philosopher Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. They are some of our favorite thinkers and it's a lot of based on their thought that we've been thinking about these things. So it's like we kind of created this imitation, this replication of what was happening on the financial market, but with a little difference. So it kind of was this simulacrum, which started to create a repetition with a difference, which started to open into a new economic space. That was the politics there, really.
Yes. Continuing on that, what are the goals of ECSA? Because I mean, on the sites and in the different writings and videos that you guys have out there, you guys talk about building a different economic and political reality. Sort of thinking, like you said, if there's a history, then there is a future. So at some point, most likely, we're going to reach a post-capitalism. But do you see this type of post-capitalism as a socialist one in a sense, or is it something that's more up in the air?
Yeah, so I'm a pragmatist, so I don't really care if it's a socialist. Post-capitalism is something we think it defines it quite well, the direction we're going. But if you're asking what's the goal, that's a good question. I think that our goal is to open the media of economy, open the language of economy, so that we could give everyone the same rights to express, to create literacy, a genres of economy, for ourselves to express ourselves. And why? Because we need to decentralize the authorship of futures. And that just means open sourcing and decentralizing that which remained still centralized in the era of social networks, which means the information and protocol layer called the economy. So that's what we are thinking. And the goal kind of another way to think about it would be maybe to say that our goal is really to think that what kind of economics and politics becomes possible when our economic organizational composition becomes a software design question, or basically it becomes bounded only by our imagination. So that's like where our thought space is. That's where we are working. Like with these new network technologies, what kind of economy could become and politics could become possible? And it seems to be one of the most difficult things to understand that there is now with the cryptographically enabled technologies, there's this potential to cause the cryptoeconomic networks. They have a potential to cause an irreversible change in how we understand economy, like economy in itself, economy and its conventions as a design space. So taking this in consideration, then you think about what is happening in crypto economics or in decentralized finance, and there seems to be very little attention in rethinking the economic component or the finance component. And rather there's this implicit embrace of a pretty conservative economics orthodoxy of what is money, what is value, what are markets, what is credit used for, what kind of incentives create the best social outcomes. And we think that it's this orthodoxy which is actually blocking the real potentiality of the situation, including the potentiality of the distributed computational substrate right now. So that's our goal, that we want to expand what economy is. We want to bring that really into the information age.
Well, I mean, first I want to say that I was nodding my head a lot because, yeah, I agree definitely. It seems that the current state of DeFi and cryptocurrency, for the most part, is a little bit lacking in creativity, in the sense that it is a lot of it is a replication of sort of how the economy exists already today just on the blockchain. And that's sort of, it goes against really what was, was the original intention of something like Bitcoin. It was really meant to, they really had this thought that they would change social relationships, I think, in a sense. And that's something that I think is missing besides what has already been done in DeFi. But so when you say that cryptography has the potential to drastically change the economy, why do you think that is? Like, what is special about cryptography and like what it's able to do in changing economics?
Yeah, that's exactly the right question. So let's say that from our perspective, in fact, there is quite a lot of creativity in the DeFi right now, a lot, and I enjoy it following it and trying to keep up with it also quite a lot. But it seems that the nature of our economic networks, the nature of the financial protocols, it's bound by the expressivity of the language that can conceive them. So we really want to create a more expressive language to describe our economic and financial networks. That's kind of where the potentiality space is.
So just to go back to the question about cryptography, to make it clear, I guess, for people why cryptography has such an impact. Is it because of the potential of using that technology for creating, I guess, economic institutions that are quite unbreakable to a certain extent?
Yes, and programmable from bottom up. That's the landscape that it's really opening.
Yeah, so that I think that's the really interesting part of it, is that it's opening up the creation of financial and economic organizations to people, which was something that was really restricted to, people in banking, people in finance, people with the legal knowledge on how to create an LLC, for example, and being able to do that is now something that is a bit more attainable for, random people on the internet, essentially.
Yes, exactly. So back in 2013, it was 14, when the Ethereum white paper came out, and we were reading it, and like it was hurting in our head, what is this? What is this decentralized autonomous organization? How can it work? And we were not the only ones. It kind of, you could tell that when the meetup started to just happen everywhere around the world almost, you could tell that it was the time was right for that. And the key thing there really was that it kind of opened up the idea that it's not only this market relation or this quick transaction relation which collapses all the sociality, but there opens this more longer term relationships between people, this more longer term, more dimensional relation, this space, this what we call economic space. It opens up as a programmable, as a design space, and that's really the exciting place, I think, for us. Yeah. And what we see in the DeFi, kind of for the composability and the integration of DAOs and these more financial money market protocols, what is happening, that's the direction.
Yeah, which is, I think, particularly interesting, and we'll talk about it more later, but it sort of goes against the Hayekian sort of idea of price being like the ultimate value, and that it's able to reduce all of these other things into one, whereas actually, which, Hayek is someone that a lot of these crypto people really like, but what's actually being shown is that potentially we can expand that so that price isn't the only type of value that's able to be expressed. Or like monetary value is able to be expressed. So for my next question, in the writings of ECSA, you guys talk about a social derivative. So I'm curious, what do you define a social derivative? And do you think there's any danger in mixing the financial and the social? Because has been, particularly recently, with the rise of neoliberalism, a lot of left-wing academics in particular have written about the dangers of financialization and sort of the extent that banks and other financial institutions are willing to go to financialize or privatize certain things, basically that used to be a part of the commons, maybe historically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I from our perspective, there's no question about it that the financial and the social, they are already mixed. So that's I mean, social media, it's already economic media. That's our basic thesis. Social media, it's already our economic media. The problem just is that we don't have any access to these economic protocols that social media uses, and that's one of the main problems, and why they need to be also decentralized. The same thing, that economic media or monetary media, it is already social. Finance, it is already social. The money it's a social relationship, certain kind of a relationship, social relationship, a set of protocols, and then that's kind of for the starting point. So the risk really is that we don't enter this space, that we don't enter into this protocol design and start to like re-engineer this convergence between financial and social. So that's really how we are thinking. And because if we don't get into this space, if we don't get into these protocols and start like designing them ourselves, we don't have politics. We are like out of possibility of affecting our own life and our own futures. Yeah. That's what we think. So we're thinking that we are moving from. I'm now trying to get to the social derivative, which I think it's a great concept. Economic media, it's important one for us, but so is the social derivative. So we're moving from this, like in the social networking, you peer socially by you read messages, you repost, you forward content, and so on. That's how you operate in the social networking space. We are thinking that we are moving into this from social networking into economic networking. So in the economic networking, agents, like using the economic media, agents kind of start to form these disintermediated economic alliances by offering and reoffering, by entering into value relationships, by issuing, redeeming, engaging in the creation of credit, equity, other financial relationships. So they can peer through a shared economic protocol, a shared economic medium or economic grammar to form a networked economic system. So that's how we see that what we want to do and where we see that this is going. So if you think of Kickstarter and Patreon, which I think that you're using too, some of the DeFi protocols, they are like the first baby steps of this transformation.
Hey everyone, and Happy New Year's. If you're enjoying this episode so far, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend, and join the crypto leftist communities on Discord or Reddit, which you can find links to in the show notes. If you want to be sure that more content like this can be created, you can donate to my efforts through Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/theblockchainsocialist, you can donate starting at $3 a month or more to help me out and join the newest patron, Corbinian, and the 16 other existing patrons. At the moment, I've spent more on this project than I've ever earned from it due to hosting costs, so any amount really helps. As a patron, you'll get a shout out on an episode like I just did, and access to monthly Patreon exclusive Q&A episodes, where you can submit questions about blockchain and socialism that you'd like me to answer, and I'll give my thoughts in about 20 to 30 minutes. On the latest episode of the Patreon exclusive Q&A series, I actually gave my thoughts on the question about markets versus planning under socialism using blockchain. So, of course, I'll still be making content that is free, like this interview, so I can help spread the message that blockchain doesn't need to be used to further entrench capitalist exploitation if we put our efforts into it. So if that message resonates with you, I hope you'll consider helping out. So by transformation, is this sort of like what Patreon and services like that have done is like allowed people to support someone like me who's just creating content to like share information with people, and people can pay or not pay, and they use certain fintech technology to try to make it feasible for someone to give $5, $10, like a little bit per month as a way to sustain a creator, like an artist. Whereas maybe in the medieval times, a patron was someone who paid was usually like a royal, it's part of the royalty or something like that. In that way, I guess it has changed economic relationships.
Certainly, and with the transformation, I mean that it gives you, it's a expressive tool for you to start express an economic relationship between you and a patron. Kind of that becomes possible. You can express that, hey, I have this great project. Would you like to support me? And you can express it, and you can execute it. So that's what I mean. And these are like the first baby steps of this expressive power. And when we talk about the economic media, we mean that we can express more kind of relationships in a more granular way. Like what I was saying, that you can do it by engaging in creation of credit, equity relationship, other financial relationships. You peer through this doing this. So not like in the social networking, the peering is different. You do it through this economic networking. You do it through this sharing the economic medium or the economic grammar. So this is what we are thinking, that it is these things that are merging, that we are discovering, and it's not only we, but it's the time again that we are all together. We are about to together to right now to discover this new value form, this new social, organizational, relational value formation, which is characteristic to the information age. So, if you know, like Marx was writing in the Capital. I'm sure you read it.
Of course, everyone has read it.
So the volume one of the Capital, the Capital is a great book where he tries to reveal the economic patterns of capitalist mode of production. And how does he start it? What's the first chapter of the volume one of Capital? It's the commodity. So it's this commodity form, of production of value, which is a particular kind of a form in which things are can be bought and sold, and in the circulation of which it's the starting point of capital, where the product is the money. So Marx starts from there, and he shows like it is this form, this commodity form, where the social relations between people, because that's what capital is. It's a social relationship. It's a form in which this social relations between people take the form of relations between things. So it seems to you that you are just exchanging these things, you're buying and selling things, but what is actually happening is the social relations. So, and that gets hidden or forgotten in the commodity form. And the commodity form was for Marx it was the basic economic cell of the capitalist industrial society. So what we are saying, that it's no longer the commodity form which characterizes which is the economic cell of our society, but it is there's emerging a new value form, this networked, social, organizational, new kind of a value form, what we call the economic space. So the economic space is like this new layer of economic abstraction, and the ECSA protocol, the economic protocol that we are designing, building, it is to express and execute these new social economic formations. It's the new language, the new medium to express these things. Yes. So the social derivative, it's another name for the economic space. It's another name for this emerging new value form, social value form, which characterizes the information age. And why we use derivative community is another name we use, but why we use it is because, well, first of all, we want to show that the derivative actually has a social logic, that it's a risk generating practice. It's with a sensibility of arbitrage. It's a social logic which takes us beyond just mere profit extracting a relation or ownership as the only social relations. It's like a different kind of sensitivity. It allows us to value and sense how we are linked together. It allows us to leverage coming together, like being able to come together and act together in a way that a new opportunity opens up, and we can grab it. It allows us to this collective enjoyment of an upside created by facing this risk together. So this is kind of we are trying to say that there's a social logic. The derivative has this social logic which the finance industry has just like appropriated and objectivized and used, but it does not belong to it, and we want to reappropriate it and use it. So when we think of ECSA, of the Economic Space Agency, for instance, we think of it as a social derivative. It's like this derivative social. So where we are coming together, this weird group of people. We are not like one. We are not in any kind of symbiosis. We are heterogeneous people coming together with different contributions. And by doing this, we are leveraging this coming together in a way that an opportunity opens up, and we are able to grab it and collectively enjoy the upside. So that's a social derivative.
It's basically being able to define what the value is from social networks and from like the network effect, I guess, a bit. But so one of the things that I find really interesting about ECSA is this co-optation of financial jargon for imagining a post-capitalist and, a more egalitarian future. Because I think one of my critiques of sort of socialist movements in the past, especially in the West, is sometimes their rigidness. When there's something new or unique that comes out of left-wing movements, however, it tends to get co-opted by capital. And so I think it sometimes makes it difficult for the left to try and create new things because they're afraid that whatever they make is just going to be dominated by capital and it's going to swallow it and then repurpose it for capitalism's sort of needs. So it's sort of like this, capitalism is able to sell anti-capitalism even today. You can buy shirts today from a company which is a very capitalist company, but it says I hate capitalism on it or something like that, and there's like we lose the irony of the whole situation. It's kind of gotten out of hand. But so this idea of co-opting capitalism for more egalitarian needs, I think is very cool, and it puts the left in the position of offense rather than always on defense.
Yeah, I agree absolutely, and I would say that it's more than just the words. Even if we are kind of very explicitly also taking these certain words like the derivative, we are like deterritorializing it from meaning just it's not just a financial device. We are turning it into a way of expressing the social itself, or we are taking interest and redefining what it is, or arbitrage, and kind of overturning these meanings and recapturing it. Because it's like I was trying to say in the beginning that we also kind of these new forms which are emerging, and I think we all feel it, but we don't yet have the right words. That's kind of a part of the things that how you recognize this new forms which are emerging, that you can't exactly like say, you don't have the words yet. You know it's there, but you can only like point there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we need to also create the new vocabulary, the new language to express what is happening and what we want to do, what kind of economic networks we want to build.
Yeah, well said. But so then, knowing all this, what was it that attracted ECSA towards distributed ledger technology and blockchain? Was it something that was being considered already from the beginning of the creation of ECSA?
Yeah, it was ECSA was our move to start working with this technology, really. So kind of our point was that, can we use these peer-to-peer networking technologies, these new information networks, can we use them to open up new framings of economy, new framings of politics? That was still is what we are excited about.
Yeah, it is very cool to see a left-leaning organization to have already had blockchain in mind. I think it's pretty rare. But one of the problems that we face on the left, I think, or even more broadly in general, people who are skeptical of this technology of blockchain and distributed ledger technologies as having any sort of use, is that they say that blockchain is usually a solution looking for a problem. So I was curious, is that something that you would agree with? Because it seems that, and I think you would not agree with it, because it seems that ECSA has been able to identify some of these problems that it could help with, especially from the left, like from the perspective of being an anti-capitalist or wanting to move beyond capitalism.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think. That I don't kind of quite see it that way at all. I think that there are these questions or problems like that we need to decentralize what was left centralized now, still in the era of the social media, which are precisely this information layer, protocol layer of money and economy. And the only way to do it is with this kind of a technology, which allows us to start from the bottom up, start creating these peer-to-peer networks, which can be trusted, which can be execute securely and reliably. So we need this kind of a substrate. There's no question about it. Blockchain, I think it's just it's in the beginning. These first generation technologies that we have now, there are still problems that need to be solved, and we also working on the technology level, and think that we see where the direction needs to be going, like towards this more like a logically decentralized network layers.
So one of the popular academics in the crypto libertarian space, sort of the largest, somewhat political group in cryptocurrencies and blockchain, is Friedrich Hayek. So he was a famous Austrian anti-socialist Austrian economist. But so as an organization like ECSA, which is exploring crypto and blockchain through this post-capitalist lens, there's a bit of a contradiction with the crypto libertarians who believe crypto to be the perfect example of why pro-capitalist and market fundamentalism of Hayek was correct. So I know you guys have written a bit about it, but how do you synthesize this Hayekian market fundamentalism in cryptocurrencies with your what seems to be more of an anti-Hayekian vision of post-capitalism?
Yeah, that's a great question, and yeah, that it's true. We've written quite a lot about Hayek, but not only Hayek, also Marx, Keynes, Schumpeter, and kind of which is our take that we're just about to publish soon, the ECSA economic paper, where we basically try to take these kind of where we situate the economic protocol we've been building and the kind of economics that it makes possible into the history and future of economy. We are trying to take what we can learn from these thinkers, but trying to take it to the information age. So Hayek, yeah, so he is definitely a anti-socialist. Was an anti-socialist thinker, but he also had a conflict with the neoclassical economists too. So, and he was kind of a pretty marginal figure until Thatcher brought him to the daylight. But smart guy, I got to say, especially the later writings of Hayek, it's very interesting what he says, and we are taking very seriously what we can learn from him. So his kind of position is that, yeah, market is the natural side of freedom of expression and means to generate spontaneous social order. He thinks that kind of the market is not the problem, but the problem is the inadequate specification of private property rights and rules of the market. And it's the state, when the state starts to interfere, they just mess it up. So including the provision of the state-sanctioned monetary system, the fiat system. So in that sense, on the surface level, it does seem like a perfect fit with the crypto economics, and there has been a lot of people like referring to Hayek, and things have been built from this same kind of a perspective, like the radical markets thesis. I don't know if you know it, but kind of the point is for us is that you got to remember that economy, you cannot separate economy and politics. So with the Hayek also comes the idealization of the individualism, profit, and market as the foundational social relations. So kind of from our perspective, Hayek thinks that market is something natural. It's a culturally and economically foundational thing. It's this neutral technology.
And this is something very common with I think a lot of economists, that markets are a natural, or like as if humans have always sort of existed in a market organization. But I guess,
yeah, and they just come there with their strategic interests, and then that creates either equilibrium, which is the neoclassical, or then a spontaneous order, which is the Hayek strand of economic thinking. And from our perspective, markets are not natural. They are not something innate instruments of capitalism, but they can be created and structured. We are redesigned protocols to open different spaces of possible. So this is kind of what we do with Hayek. We rethink the knowledge market relationship in the sense that for us, we turn markets and profits and price just a protocol, not something natural or foundational, but just a protocol which means that it can also be redesigned. So I can explain you a little bit more, because this is kind of interesting and important. So we take the like I said, we kind of deconstruct certain standard economic categories, because we want to learn from the earlier thinking. Hayek, yes, but also Keynes, especially from his take on credit. He writes beautifully and so well that money actually comes out of credit. But we want to take this thinking into the information age. So we deconstruct what these economic theories, so that we don't unnecessarily bring those parts of their thinking into what we want to do in the information age. So we kind of take seriously what Hayek says about the market and the price, but in a sense kind of take him from behind. It's a classical Deleuzean move, so that a monster is born. and we kind of give him a derivative treatment, or we frame what he's saying from the perspective of the derivatives and synthetic finance. So that's how it goes. So basically, what he says, he has this very famous text from 1945, Use of Knowledge in Society, where he's saying that what he calls economic calculus, that it actually solves the problem of resource allocation, and he's writing against the central planning. So he says that it solves the resource allocation, especially when information is dispersed, it's incomplete, it's contradictory, it cannot be known by one central somebody to make the decisions about the resource allocations. And how it does it is through price. So he's saying that price can act to coordinate people. It's the price is this embodiment of complex information. It's the simple representation of that complexity, of this complex knowledge about society. It gives this numerical index in which all this information is condensed. So it's great. There's a great functionality. There's great economy of knowledge in this sense, and by that he means that there's this symbol which passes this essential information, and only to those who are concerned. So it's great, like economy of knowledge. So he's saying that the price system is really a machinery for registering change and guiding people to act in a certain way. So it's like a navigational system. And this is, in fact, this is very, very interesting, and the analysis is very precise. But so then we ask that, okay, but why is the price the only index of valuation? Like, and this is what I meant with the derivative treatment, is that if we think of knowledge like Hayek, for instance, is describing it, it's actually a synthetic asset. So the knowledge it's assembled of processed information, which we can break it into these underlying elements, right? So all this knowledge, this complexity of knowledge, we don't necessarily need to combine it, bind it, and link it into this one index, the price. There can be other things, other kind of indexes can be combined out of this assembled knowledge. So the purpose of creating this index doesn't need to be just the formation of the market price. So if we think about the price like in the technical terms, it is really a derivative, a knowledge derivative. So it's just an exposure position on the underlying knowledge. So and in technical terms, what Hayek means with the price, it's really a strike price on the option on the synthetic asset called knowledge. Okay, so in Hayek, when we look at Hayek from this perspective, it becomes clear that Hayek's approach on spontaneous order, it's just an excessive reduction of information to a single totalizing unit of measure, and we can deconstruct it into these components that are behind price, and we can link it to a different measure. So it's important to really understand that price is just an index. It just measures relative values. It's just a navigational protocol, but it just gets treated as an absolute measure, but on its origin, it is social and political construct, and that's it. So then the follow-up question is that, okay, if this is so, why is the price the privileged expression of valuation? Why is the price the index of valuation? And we think that is so because it expresses the values of the capitalist society, the priorities and the behaviors of the subjectivity, of the capitalist subjectivity. But from our perspective, when you open it up, it turns out to be a very, very narrow expression, very narrow grammar to understand what value is and how it gets composed. So we are thinking that kind of these the capitalist values, the social and cultural norms, these ways of behavior and subjectivity which are embedded in them, they follow to a critical degree from the nature of ownership, collateralization of assets, the control of issuance and acceptance of credit, and access to the money, access to money and credit. So from certain protocols. And when you start to redesign them, re-engineer them into something what we call risking together, distributed ownership and distributed issuance of money, then also these social and cultural norms, our subjectivity will be profoundly changed and challenged. That's the kind of how we read him, or how we try to use him.
That is interesting. It's sort of this obsession with price as a very. I mean, it shows that capitalism is extremely subjective, and it's not only that; it's extremely narrow, and it's very limiting in how you can express yourself. And it just shows the amount of truth in sort of like, people feeling like they cannot express themselves. I mean, as capitalism has developed, it just becomes more and more difficult as your life is mediated by more and more market relationships, that it's difficult to be able to have non-capitalist relationships, ones that aren't based on, transacting or like, what can you get out of a particular relationship, and purely thinking about it in that way. Using basically Hayek's writing to prove how much capitalism sucks.
Yeah, but kind of, and this made me think of the Patreon again. Kind of, from your perspective, it has opened up this space of expression a little bit for you, no? That you can express a little bit more what you want to do in economic terms.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
That's right. So we treat Hayek like this. We give the same treatment to Marx. We give the same treatment to Keynes, and in developing our what we call the economic space protocol. So I'm happy to share this stuff with you.
My next question is about this term economic grammar. It's something that you use a lot. So what is the significance of using this word grammar in an economic sense, which it's mostly used as we're talking about language? And I guess for me, in the technical sense of the word, when you think about language, you can think about it, of course, in programming language and the grammar of a programming language, and whether or not you put a semicolon here or there to make your function work. But I think as well, in a network sense, it seems to me it's like another way of saying the data standardization and standardizing data so that people can transact with each other. So if people have the grammar of particular data standards, like the Bitcoin data standard, where you're supposed to have, one address here, one address there, what's the transaction amounts, and da-da-da. By having this type of grammar, people in the Bitcoin network are able to economically speak to each other in a sense. But maybe I'll stop there and let you explain, sort of what ECSA means by grammar.
Yeah, sure. No, it's like I said, we are really excited about this, the grammar perspective, where we were at first we were talking about pattern languages, and then the grammar. We finally understood that that's it. And well, if you think what I was just saying about Hayek, kind of, if everyone is speaking the language of price and pursuit of profit as the singular index of decision making, then it causes what Hayek calls the spontaneous order. Market interactions create spontaneous order. That's the but it's a grammar. It's like a grammar of social interaction, and the result is then what it is. So that's kind of our perspective. It's the meta. Now, it means that from the grammar perspective, it opens economy as a network. So we can start to think economy as a network, meaning a group of agents interacting under certain agreements, shared understandings about what defines the relationships between the agents in the network, what's the state of the network, how the state changes, what is valued in this network. So and it makes us understand that really that the nature of our economic networks, it's bound by the expressivity of the language that can conceive them. So that's it. And that's why we want to create a more expressive language to describe our economic networks. Like, what kind of participants can there be? What kind of relationships can they be with the agents? What's the nature of these relationships? How can they change? What is valued? What kind of values can you express in these networks? How is this value exchanged, and can you accumulate it? You know, so this is the kind of what opens up from the grammar and the language perspective. So the language framing, it reveals the protocol as a communication agreement. So it reveals that the protocol, it's essentially about the capability to create, as a language, as a grammar, the protocol is about the capability to create new spaces and new agents through conversation, through expression. So it also means that governance, it's not so much about structures, but it's about expressions, like who gets to express and what. So that's where we are what's opening us with the language framing. We can also express, and this is kind of very important from the technical perspective also, we can express the capacity of the network to define itself as an agent and to redefine itself. So basically, the network as a grammar, it can talk about itself. It can start to reflect on itself. Now, the third thing is that it reveals the symmetricity in the approach. So we are thinking that if everybody speaks the same language, then everybody has the equal capacity of expression, by which then they can then start to define different roles and different sub-languages. So that's super important, that everybody has the language perspective opens this access, more access perspective. Then, like I was saying, earlier we were talking with you, maybe the most important thing with the grammar, or what opens with the grammar perspective, is that it's a different coordination mechanism. It's a coordination tool. Grammar, it's a coordination tool that doesn't require a global clock like all blockchains do. So language coordinates differently. So we can have with no synchronization. So we can have like multiple conversations going on in different places, different locations in the world, but they can still relate into each other. They can still understand each other, past ones and the future ones. And that makes you think like it's a really interesting way of coordinating. So it doesn't coordinate with synchronization. So basically that you need to have one global state, which everybody shares, but rather with validation by indexing, by embedding temporalities to another one by indexing, basically referencing. So it coordinates any potential conversation, past, future, anywhere, with no central time. And this is something in fact, which we think that will be very, very important soon. And it kind of points to a more fundamental understanding of the communication system, which the protocols are. They're just communication systems versus the efficient market model or the contract model. So it's more fundamental understanding of the communication situation, and it redefines what a distributed system is. So that it kind of opens that the distributed system, it's a whole defined by the changing relationships of its parts, which does partitioning by indexing. So it doesn't need to choose between consistency and a fork. So these are kind of very interesting discussions that are opening up. We have some extremely good linguists like Benjamin Lee from the New School, for instance, in the team with whom we've been like really seriously working on the grammatic or the metagrammatic or the cryptosemiotic perspective to what we do.
That's interesting because it's like you need a new language to think about the language of economics, which is super meta and
yeah. Welcome to ECSA, man.
Definitely. What are some of the use cases that are using DLT and blockchain that ECSA is advocating for? Like, how can you get a listener to think about what are the type of relationships that may use distributed ledger technology that are mediated through that ECSA would want to try and create?
That's a very good question. Can I throw it back to you? What do you think?
Well, I think you're asking me because you want me to repeat what I said before we started recording. Because, so what it sounds like to me with ECSA and this talk about economic grammar, right? So to me, it sounds like data standardization, and by having a standardized structure of information, you are able to communicate with others who have the same structure of information. Like that's how the computers talk, essentially, right? And it's taking this idea of how computers talk, but instead applying this to how people talk or how organizations talk. So, organizations, they as well have data standardization in a certain sense, in that they have shared knowledges about something that they can express with one another, so that they can talk about details of a particular project they may be working on. And so what is interesting, I think, with the use of blockchain and distributed ledger technology is that it's able to recreate or identify the structures of information and data back into a computer. So taking the economic language and then translating it into computer language, but that still expresses economic activity or any other type of activity you wanted to express. But so then this is particularly interesting from the left-wing perspective, because the left is obviously very divided and very sectarian, because you have Trotskyists on one side and Marxist-Leninists and anarcho-communists on all these different sides who all disagree on different things, but they still have some shared goals, in the sense that they want to bring about a new economic system that is not capitalism, that is more like some type of socialism. And so these organizations or small groups of Trotskyists and anarcho-communists, they are able to debate with each other about, philosophical minute details that they think matter, but they're not able to use that same language to achieve a certain goal. And so by creating a grammar and creating a protocol in which they're able to communicate with each other and have economic relationships with each other, I think in that way they're able to at least work on the things that they're able to overlap on, and therefore have a stronger left rather than such a divided left as we have at the moment. That's sort of how I see some of the work that ECSA has been doing.
Certainly, that's a very good way to put it. So there, the key point, really, what you were saying was that the coordination happens not through sharing a state, but sharing the protocol, sharing the grammar with which everybody can express. So that kind of that's our key insight in there. But yeah, we also think that there are you are very good at use case, for instance. I mean, people who are creating interesting content, want to create a community, want to bring people together in a way that something new opens up, and then you want to share this upside. You want to share the risk and the upside of this endeavor, and that's for which the grammar is really meant, so that we can actually express different values which do not need to be profit oriented. So it can be care, it can be the environment, the biosphere, health, different intangibles, open source, that we can start to bring these different values into the accounting system, circulation system, staking system, create collateral out of these different value productions, and open credit lines between people with these different value productions. So that's the landscape that's opening up. I know that there are a couple of, and maybe more, that I even don't know about, like interesting experiments going on in the blockchain and DAO space also, where people are already thinking that kind of how do we move from these siloed protocols into more symbiotic ones? How can a decentralized exchange, what kind of a relationship can it create with this different money market protocol, for instance? How could the two DAOs do a stake swap or create a mutual stakeholding, and kind of the tools for this kind of things? That's where we are thinking, and at the moment also building some first experiments.
Yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to speak about ECSA. Maybe to top it off, where can people keep up with your work and what you're doing, and as long as what ECSA is doing? Where should they go?
Yeah, so the website of Economic Space Agency is ECSA.io. We are kind of active there. You can leave your email and join the newsletter. You can email me or message me in Twitter or in Telegram. I write at my handle is Econaut. We also have a blog where we write about crypto economic stuff, which is called the Econaut in Medium.
Like astronauts, but economic.
Economic, and it has to do with the navigation. Kind of, we are thinking the Econauts are the agents of this new economic space who speak the new language of post-capitalist economy.
Exploring the new frontier of economics, I guess.
Exactly. We really think that it's like the Renaissance, like the Renaissance scientists, Galileo and Da Vinci. What they did, they invented these new instruments for the emerging new space-time, the macrocosmos, which was opening up the telescopes that they could actually see and start to understand what is going on there. So also the microcosm, they started to study gravity, acceleration, different navigational instruments. We also need to create these new navigational instruments for this emerging new economic space-time, the new economic space.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Well, thanks a lot and good luck with ECSA. I can highly recommend people check it out. They have a lot of very cool events that they host as well, so you can also take part in those.
Great. Hey, thanks for having me. Bye.